Hi there, my name's Chris Widener. I'm one of the co-founders of ROI Expert Advisors, and I just want to let you know that we are rebranding the Big Mo Real Estate Radio Show to ROI Real Estate Radio. Still great content. We're still going to be motivating, still going to be helping you make more money, but just wanted to let you know we are now ROI Real Estate Radio.
Well, good day, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Big Mo Radio Show. I've got my good friend here, Chris Widener. I'm Chris Stegg. We are co-hosts of the show. We're happy to be here today with you. And I'm looking forward to this topic today. And one of the things, actually, there's three things that we want to help agents on, and that is you will obviously get motivated. You will build the right momentum, and at the end of the day, you will make more money. And so I'm happy to be here with my good friend Chris Widener, and we're going to talk through a subject today called time management. And I think this is going to be a subject that will be helpful to all of us listening in on. And before we get started, Chris has spoken to literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of folks across the globe, Fortune 500 companies. Chris comes from the speaking world, small, medium, large-sized businesses on this very subject of time management. And so to kind of go along with that, Chris, why are you qualified? What is it about you that can speak on this subject of time management so clearly and has been effective and can be so effective for us as agents? And so, Chris, welcome to the show, and I can't wait to really start to dig in on this subject. So,
yeah,
Chris,
absolutely. So, why am I qualified? Well, I'll tell you why I'm qualified, and it came from a friend of mine. It was a compliment that he paid me. He was recently, after saying this to me, he said, "I wish I had your life." And I said, "I wish I had your money," because he sold his company for 800 million. But what he was saying was the way I've designed my life. And I really have designed my life to be the life that I want to live. And the way you do that is by managing your time. I'm ruthless about managing my time. I do what I want to do when I want to do it. I have my entire adult life, never really worked for anybody else. Nobody else was telling me what I was going to do with my time. But in order to be successful, you have to manage that time. You have to make sure that you're doing the right things. And so I would say the fact that I've done it and I've created the life of my dreams is a pretty good thing. Now, on top of that, I've written 22 books. I've spoken to crowds as large as 25,000 and 2,500 speeches all around the world. My book's been translated into 14 languages. I've done 100 audio programs. I got my start doing time management seminars. Actually, I really got my start as a youth speaker. But then when I started doing more adult-oriented conventions and things like that, I really started with time management. And I created a thing called the Ultimate Time Management Seminar. What I did was I read 30 books and I watched like 14 DVDs, and I just accumulated all the information around time management, and I condensed it down into the sort of the best practices. It was sort of an aggregation of all the best time management practices and things like that, and created an audio program that we've sold a lot of over the years called the Ultimate Time Management Seminar. I had kind of another one called Bringing Balance to a Chaotic Life, which was more of a philosophical one, but it also included a lot of time management stuff, because the way you bring balance to a chaotic life is through time management. So
time management. Well, so I'm interested. Let's kind of talk to this. So, because I mean, can we actually manage time? I mean,
well, there you go. You asked the right question right out of the chute, because I call it the myth of time management. And the fact is, you can't manage time. Now you're like, wait a minute, I thought we were talking about time management. Now you're telling me we can't manage time. Well, it's sort of a play on words or the idea, but if you think about it, time happens no matter what you're doing. So, if you manage money, you're taking $1,000 from here and you're putting it over here. You can manage money, right? But time is not a tangible thing, and time keeps on ticking. What is that? Was it Kansas? Time keeps on ticking, ticking. Was that Kansas? I don't know if it was or not. But now all my rock and roll fans are like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But if you think about it, time happens no matter what, right? that second hand just keeps right on moving, whether you're sleeping or you're dead or you're running or you're working hard. When you stop, it just keeps running. You can't stop time from going on. So you really can't manage time. So this whole concept of time management is really what I call self-management. You can manage yourself while time is passing by. And this is the difference between Jeff Bezos, who's the richest man in the world, and a bum who's laying on the street corner on a bench. They both have 24 hours a day, but one is drinking and, panhandling, and that's how that person spends his time. The other person spends his time building a business or whatever, right? And I would say, and that's a very polarized, ends of the spectrum to show, but I would even condense that down into real estate agents. And I would say that successful real estate agents are self-aware enough to know that they need to master themselves. They need to manage themselves as time passes them by, because at 9 a.m. every day, you can take two different real estate agents, and one is going to do certain things with themselves from 9 until 5, and the other person's going to do something else with themselves from 9 until 5, and they will both create the results based on what they do with themselves while that 9 to 5 passes by, or 6 to 6, or 9 to 12, or whatever it is, right? Time is going to happen regardless of what you do. So the real difference between successful and unsuccessful is what you do while time passes you by. So I think that's a fundamental thing that we really need to understand, is that it's really about self-management, not time management.
Mm-hmm. Well, the fact that we're given the opportunity each day, we actually wake up with a breath of fresh air, and I like the word stewardship. I like stewarding that time, because it's actually something that we're given, and so in time keeps on, like you said, going. But if we can steward the time that we've been given and manage it well, then I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's all about the end result. And it's about those processes. We talked about that on an earlier episode, where it's about the processes and what we do. How do we manage? How are we to be good stewards of that time throughout the day? And I think it goes along with maybe one of these key items that you talked through, Chris, and it's about avoiding time wasters. You talk a little bit more about those times that we actually can waste.
Everybody has time wasters.
Yep.
And you've got to deal with those time wasters, and everybody's is different. And I'll tell you a couple of mine. I think probably my biggest one is news, right? I'm a news junkie. I actually have a news business in another one of my businesses. I own multiple businesses, and one of them is a news aggregator site. And I got into that because I love news, and particularly political news. I'm kind of a political junkie. I ran for the U.S. Senate in 2010, and I've worked with a ton of politicians, and so I'm a news junkie. And so I can waste a lot of time reading news. And I sort of justify it by saying, well, I'm in the news business. But there's times, if you're really honest with yourself, you go, yeah, I'm just reading the news, and it has nothing to do. The other thing is social media. And I'm not too bad with social media. I've made a lot of money and built a lot of businesses on Facebook. And so, Facebook is important to me, because I used to have a 1 million person page on Facebook. I sold it. I think I probably have 250,000 people now or something like that. So it's a business for me. So I need to spend time on Facebook. But what I realized was that Instagram, which was more just for fun, looking at stuff, I realized that was becoming a time waster for me. So I deleted it off my phone. I literally just deleted it. Now, about every 2 weeks, I download it again from the Apple Store just to check my emails where people will send me messages. But then I realized I can actually do it on the browser. So about every 2 weeks, I'll log in and I'll look at my mail. If I have something, I answer people, and then I delete it. But Instagram isn't a big thing for me, but it could be talking to your friends. It could be, golfing. Maybe you're golfing too much. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, who could golf too much, right? Because you're the golf guy. But it's really looking at those things that Obviously we need downtime. So I'm not saying you should never look at social media, you should never golf, you should never read the news. But if you're self-aware enough, you will know when you're doing it too much and it's affecting your money-making opportunities. So I think the first thing is just to be ruthless about what is it that I'm doing? What is it that I'm doing that I'm just wasting time? Because if you can just make even some marginal adjustments on that, most people could pick up an extra hour a day, which is an extra 7 hours a week. It's an extra 365 hours a year. And if you divide that by 40, you're talking about, what is that? 9 times 4. Yeah. 8 times 4, 32. Yeah. It's 9 times, right? So 9 work weeks. By just shaving a little bit of time, you can pick up 9 work weeks just simply by getting rid of some time wasters.
And I think it's really scary if we, at the end of the year, at the end of the month, we could actually know how many hours a day are we spending time on the news or in social media, things that are just unproductive, that aren't going to move the ball down the field. Is this task getting us closer to achieving this goal, or is it moving us further and further away from achieving this goal? And so, that I know, like you said, we fall into the gap. We fall into the sometimes of getting our news fix or getting into social media. But we talked earlier about time blocking and about that time that during your workday. If you're an employee and an employer and you're on their clock, you have some things you have to do to get paid at the end of the week or end of the month or at the end of the year. And if you don't do those things, they're gonna find somebody else to tackle those things. And so we as agents have to have that accountability, the personal accountability, to hold ourselves accountable. And what are some of those things that we can do? And we talked about this. The fastest way to success is to replace bad habits with good habits. And so if we can create bad habits, we certainly can create good habits. And so let's go into the next one. There's a couple of things that I want you to kind of share with us here, but let's you said something about doing a time inventory and an overall budget.
Yeah. So I want you to think about time like you think about money.
Yep.
So if you went to a financial advisor, they're going to have you do 2 things right out of the chute. They're going to have you do an inventory of where you spend your money, and then they're going to create a budget for you. So the first thing you have to do is, somebody walks into a financial planner and says, "Oh, I make, $100,000 a year, but I just seem to never be able to, or I make $500,000 a year and I never seem to get ahead of my money," right? So the first thing a financial planner is going to do is, let's open up your checkbook. Let's find out where all your money's going. So I would suggest, and what I tell people is first and foremost, track your time for at least a week, but 2 weeks is even better. Track your time. And by tracking your time, I mean everything from the moment you wake up, reading the news, 20 minutes, and keep a little, thing, or keep it on your phone, whatever. But for 2 weeks, discipline yourself to watch how you spend every single bit of time. When you get in the car for 15 minutes, driving 15 minutes, when you're on the phone, add up at the end of the day. So track, 10 minutes with this person, 20 minutes with this person, 5 minutes with this person, right? Track every call, how much time you spent, how much time you spent answering emails, how much time you spent making presentations, whatever you do, how much time you're eating for lunch, right? So if you spend 45 minutes a day on lunch, that's it's an hour and a half every 2 days. It's 3 hours every 4 days. So it's 3 hours and 45 minutes a week you're spending on lunch at 45 minutes a day, right? So at the end of those 2 weeks, you sit down and you add them all up. Start with, how much time did I spend on the phone? Over 2 weeks, total it. How much time did I spend doing emails? Total it. How much time did I spend talking to my friends? Total it. How much time did I spend watching television? Total it. Watch every single thing you do, eating, driving, everything, right? And then you're going to get a real good snapshot of where everything went. You're going to find out how many hours a week you worked. You're going to spend out how much time you spent on the phone. You're going to spend out how much time you spent eating lunch and breakfast and dinner. And you want to have an understanding of where everything has gone. Because just like spending money, most of us have no clue. They're like, "Oh, I hardly spend any time eating lunch." And then you find out you spend an hour a day. You're spending 5 hours a week doing lunch. And again, if you cut that down to 4 hours a week, you save 52 hours just on lunch in a year, which is more than one full work week. And if you start taking that time, you condense it a little bit and you take the extra time and put it into what we're going to talk about next, that's how you're going to produce income for yourself. If you spend 3 hours a week talking to your friends on the telephone, what if you said, okay, you know what, I'm going to, instead of calling them during the work week, I'm going to call them during, on the weekends, and I'm going to talk to them for 2 hours instead of 3 hours. You just picked up another 52 hours a year. If you're spending an hour a day surfing the internet, you can cut it to half hour a day. You've just picked up, that time, multiply that times 5. That's, 2.5 hours a week, which multiply that. Now it's over 100 hours. All of a sudden you're picking up all this time. So you have to know where your time is going before you can do the next step, which is this time budgeting. So once they say, okay, you make $100,000 a year, but you're spending 110, we need to get that back down to about 80. So how do we find $30,000, right? So then you budget. Okay, well, I've been spending $1,500 a month on eating out. Okay, well, one of the ways that we can do that, we can pick up $6,000 a year by just taking that from 1,500 down to 1,000. So you want to spend it, you're still going to go out to eat a lot on $1,000 a month, but you're going to save $500, which is $6,000. Great. Now we're down off of $110,000 spending. Now we're at 104. We only need to find $24,000 more. And that's what you would do with a financial advisor. It's exactly what you would do. How much do you spend on clothing? Well, we spend $500 a month. Okay, spend $250. Now you've picked up $3,000 a year. Great. Now we're at $101,000. So lots of ways you do that. Now let's make that shift into time management. In time management, you want to do the same thing. I'm spending X amount of time doing this. So instead, I'm going to budget my time. And by budgeting, you write it down before it happens. Budgeting is about writing it down before it happens. Otherwise, you're just going to spend it whenever you want to spend it. You're never going to have any idea what you're doing. So you say, look, I've allotted 30 minutes for lunch every single day. Now, when your friend calls you and says, hey, do you want to go to lunch? You still get to go to lunch. Or your client, you still get to go to lunch, but you're just not going to do it for an hour, right? So you tell them, look, I can do a quick lunch. Or maybe you do a few quick lunches, like maybe you do 2 quick lunches, but you do 3 of your hour-long lunches. You're still going to pick up half hour each, which is an hour a week. So, if it's a client that you're going to need more time with, you schedule them on the day that you have an hour scheduled for lunch. If it's a half hour and you just need a quick little meeting, you schedule them on the day that you've budgeted a half hour, right? So budgeting your time. Here's the time every day I'm going to work out. Here's the time I'm going to do, here's the time I'm going to spend on lunch. Here's the time I'm going to spend on phone calls. Here's the time I'm going to spend that way. And we're going to talk about grouping tasks in a minute, but that way you are in control. And you talked about this on your other thing, on the one where I interviewed you, a day in the life of a successful real estate agent, is who runs your day. Time budgeting allows you to run your day. If you're not budgeting your time and you're simply reactionary as opposed to being proactive, remember 7 habits of highly effective people. One of them is be proactive, not reactive. Budgeting your time is proactive. Answering the phone and going, yeah, sure, I got an hour and a half for lunch. That's reactive, and you lose time, and you are no longer in control of your business. So very, very important. The budgeting is about establishing what your goals, your values, those kinds of things are, and then applying the time and the proper amount of time in order to get those goals, right? So if one of your things is physical fitness and you go, I'm going to budget 10 minutes a day to physical fitness, you're never going to get physically fit in 10 minutes a day. So you got to budget whatever it's going to be. If you want to be a bodybuilder, you're going to have to budget a little more time than if you simply just want to be fit and healthy. So whatever your goals and your values and those kinds of things are, that will help you and inform your budgeting of your time. So inventory is first. And then once you establish where you're at, you establish the budget for where you want to be at.
Yeah, I think that's good. And there's nothing like the feeling of being able to check off at the end of the day, this got done. And it's only can come from, like you said, budgeting and being a good steward of that time that you have been, that you've been given. And so I like that. I like that, Chris. And we're going to kind of go into more into grouping tasks, and then one thing that I think you talk about in your seminars and about this word discipline and the importance of that. And I kind of go into running each day, and those things that when you finish that 2 mile run, or you finish that 2.5 mile run, or you increase at each day, or you increase your maybe your mile per hour, or you decrease that time. So right now I'm at a 8.5 minute mile, and we live in the hills. I'm a big guy, but I started at about 12-minute miles. And so there's nothing like that only can come from running 12-minute miles and measuring that each day, writing those specific things down, honoring that time, honoring that time as a result of. And so then I've got a great goal of hitting an 8-minute mile for 2 miles. And so that can only come, but that what I'm hearing, Chris, I'm hearing that it's measuring and tracking that progress is what's key in making this an actual reality in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And one of the key things that I suggest as a way to budget your time is by grouping tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And in all the research that I've done, it's one of the things that comes out amongst all of the experts in time management is grouping your tasks, pardon me. And the reality is, and I'll tell you about this friend of mine from a very successful agent, well into 6 figures, almost 7 figures for 20 something years. And the first time I ever called her on her work phone, she's a friend from high school, a longtime, lifelong friend. Her and her husband are friends with Denise and me. And I got her voicemail. And she said, "Hey, this is Debbie. Thanks so much for calling. I'm not available right now, but if you'd leave a message." I return messages between 10 in the morning and 11 in the morning, and 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And of course, I had, coming from a time management seminar background, I went, that is brilliant. It's just brilliant, right? Because what happens is every time and so she lets the phone go, right? When her phone rings, she lets it go because she knows she's going to call back people between 10 and 11 and 3 and 4. And she's told them, I will return your call between 10 and 11 or 3 and 4. So if they call at 1 in the afternoon, they know that she's going to call between 3 and 4. They call at 9 in the morning, they know she's going to call them back between 10 and 11. Or if she's just completely swamped, she'll return the call between 3 and 4. One of the reasons why that's so important is she runs her day. The phone is one of the worst things because the phone essentially allows somebody else to run your day. And if you watch, people are obsessed with their phones. Like, we don't really have landlines anymore, but when we used to have landlines, right, it'd be funny. You'd have people over at your house and you're enjoying a nice leisurely evening. You're having a glass of wine. You're enjoying the conversation. Everything's going great. And the phone rings. What do most people do? Oh, I'll be right back. And off they go, right? Instead, you let it ring. But what happens if you let it ring? Your guests prove how obsessed Americans are with their phones, because eventually your friends are going to go, mm-hmm. You want to get that? Mm-hmm. Even they expect you to bail on your conversation to answer the phone, right? Yeah. And so it's really interesting. The phone is really one of my pet peeves, right? In fact, I'm going to give you guys a tip. I'm going to give you a tip. You're going to love me for this. How to get somebody else to not use their phone at lunch. This is just a bonus tip. How to get somebody to not use their phone at lunch. Here's what I do. I bring my phone with me to lunch and I set it down next to me. And about 30 seconds into lunch, and they're talking, I'll say, "Oh, hold on a minute. I don't mean to interrupt you, but hold on a minute." I pick my phone up and I go, "I want to turn my phone off so that I can give you my full attention." And I turn my phone off and I put it down. You know what they do? The vast majority of them go, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let me do mine too. I'll put it on silent." And they might say, if my wife calls, I have to answer, or I'm waiting for a call from my attorney, but everybody else I'm going to let go, right? We need to be able to allow us to control the conversations. Now, obviously, if you have some crushing, pertinent deal, you're going to see, most of us have caller ID now. You can take that one call. But the problem is we almost always take all calls. So by saying I'm going to return these 10 to 11 and 3 to 4, or whatever time frame somebody feels comfortable doing it, that they own their time. Right. Or you could even say on that voicemail, if it's an absolute emergency, be sure to text me and I'll get back to you sooner than that. And most people are going to be respectful of your time, and they're going to wait till 10 to 11 or 3 to 4, unless it really is an emergency. They need a document signed, or they need, something that, and all of these things kind of come up. But I think it's really important for us to group tasks. And here's why. The research shows that if you're working, you're sitting there typing something up and the phone rings and you have a conversation and you put your phone back down, it takes you 9 minutes mentally to get back fully into that focused mode that your brain was in before you were sidetracked and you got onto the phone, because our mind shifts and now we're into friend mode, or we're into selling mode, or we're into whatever. Then we have to come back into, spreadsheet mode or contract mode. So it really actually saves you the time by making sure that you're grouping tasks, email, phone, whatever it might be. Maybe you do your presentations on 3 days, right? Only 3 days. I could do it Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. I can come over and do that, or whatever, but you're grouping them. So you're not running over here to do this, and then you're running over here to do that. And then you're answering phones, and you got the phone on one hand, you got your second phone, you're texting somebody, and it allows you to be much more effective. So it's not just squelching your time, budget, time inventory, but it's also about managing your focus. And we lose a lot of time by being unfocused. And so by controlling our lives, we control our focus, which makes us much more efficient when we're actually working.
It reminds me of back in the day when there were landlines and we were sitting as a family at dinner time and the phone rings. We just let it ring. And it went to voicemail, and we'd all race to the voicemail machine when it was all done, and we listened to the voicemail. But some of the best things you can do, I remember there's a restaurant here in Austin where they actually have buckets near the tables, and you place your phone in that bucket. That way you give the person you're having a conversation with 100% attention. I thought it was like, oh, what's those buckets? And it's there for a reason. But you're right. The phone has the ability to really control your day. And the first thing we do, sometimes when we get up in the morning, we fall into the trap of that email. And that email, like you're saying, it controls your morning. And how can you put that aside and create better habits, good habits, and replace them with bad habits, and start your day off fresh and new, where you can actually control that day. So that's good, Chris.
Yeah.
What about the importance of discipline? Let's talk through discipline.
Ultimately, it comes down to discipline,
Yep.
right? Jim Rohn always used to say, and I spent the last I quote Jim Rohn a lot. So for those of you who are new to me, I spent the last 7 years of Jim Rohn's life working with him. For those of you who don't know Jim Rohn, he's famous on his own right. He's also famous for giving Tony Robbins his first job.
Right.
And he says, one of his most famous quotes, and it's so good, is he says, everyone must experience one of two pains, either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And the pain or the weight of discipline weighs ounces, but the weight of regret weighs pounds. And so it's a really profound saying. You will have to experience one of two pains. You get to choose your pain. Is it going to be the pain of discipline or the pain of regret? And the pain of discipline, yeah, sure, it is a pain in the neck. It's a pain to get up and go jogging every day, right? But the regret would be is if you kept yourself and you weren't in shape and you died at 45, right? And didn't get to see your kids grow up and have, get married and have their babies and, all those kinds of things, right? And so the pain of discipline, pain of regret, it's a pain to not eat ice cream every night, but it's a regret if you're 100 pounds overweight all the time. It's a pain to not buy that Louis Vuitton bag, but it's a regret when you don't have the money to pay your mortgage because you bought a bag, So I think it's really important to understand when you're looking at what you want to achieve, right? Let's say you want to sell 24 homes a year. You want to sell 24 homes a year. And you get to the end of the year, and because you didn't discipline yourself, you didn't do all those things that Chris talked about in his in the podcast where I interviewed him about the daily, what a successful realtor looks like every day. you're going to be disappointed if you don't achieve those kinds of things that you wanted to achieve, if you don't discipline yourself. So what do you need to do every single day in order to get to 24 homes? Because if you say, I'm going to do 24 homes, and then you don't discipline yourself to get those 24 homes, at the end of the year, you're going to go, oh, I really regret that I didn't discipline myself because I only sold 13 homes this year. I was 11 under my goal. And how are you going to feel about that? You're going to feel regret. And that's going to hurt a lot more than the discipline would have hurt if you would have exerted that discipline. So very, very important to understand that discipline is the key to being successful. And if you don't discipline yourself, you will eventually feel the pain of regret.
That's so good. And us as agents, we get to determine, our income. We get to determine what we want to make each year. And to use that example what if it's 24 homes? Well, in our mind's eye, let's say it's in January and we have 12 months to achieve 24 homes. Well, in our mind's eye, we've closed 24 homes. And it's December, but it's really in January. And so what do we do each day? What are those things that we have to do, your must be dones each day in order to achieve the reality of closing 24 homes? Because we know if you close 24 homes, it's going to equal this amount in income. And so a lot of the times we fall into the gap of, that would be nice, that would be kind of cool, 24 homes would be great, but what if it was already done?
Well, and have you ever bumped into somebody? You ever met another realtor and you're like, how in the world does this dude sell 24 homes? How does this dude sell 40 homes a year? Right. Or you meet somebody like, how does this lady sell 80 homes a year? Right. Yeah. And you just don't get it. Maybe they dress goofy, or maybe they're not particularly articulate, or, they don't have the charisma that you have. I'll tell you how they sell 80 homes a year. Mm-hmm. Discipline. Yeah. They sell 80 homes a year. They're doing money-making activity every single day, and you aren't. That's why they do it.
That's it. That's exactly right. What are those income-producing activities, your IPAs? What are those things? What are those posts that you're posting on Facebook? Is it an income-producing activity? How can we avoid those time wasters? If you're watching news and you're 2 hours or you're 3 hours into a something that's not producing an income producing activity, then you know what to avoid. And so what are some of those things that will produce income at the end of the month?
And you look at it in sports. Look at it in sports. Sports history is riddled with incredibly talented people who never achieved what they could have because they were lazy and undisciplined. And then it's filled with people who maybe weren't necessarily the best physically gifted people, but they succeeded because they were disciplined. I'll tell you, we have a friend of ours who, and if you're listening to this later, he might already be in the NFL, but he's a kid that went to school with the girls and has been to our home numerous times. He's the quarterback at USC right now and breaking records left and right. Well, when he went to USC as a freshman, he was a 3-star recruit, and he was 4th string behind 3 5-star recruits. But his high school football coach was Kurt Warner, the Hall of Fame quarterback. Wow. And so I wrote about him in my last book, Lasting Impact. His name is Keaton Slovis. And so Keaton shows up at the USC campus, 4th string, 3-star recruit behind 3 5-star recruits. Long story short, he ends up first game of the year. He's become 2nd string. The guy goes down with an ACL, and now the rest is history. Offensive player of the year his freshman year, and just all sorts of stuff. And it was the preparation and the discipline and the knowledge that overcame the fact that he was the 4th most physically gifted athlete. And I would say the same. That's a great example for somebody who is a realtor. Maybe there's some guy in your town who he was born into the right family and he went to the right schools and he's charismatic and good looking and all this kind of stuff. And you aren't. You know what the difference is going to be? Discipline.
Yeah, that's it.
You outwork that dude and you'll make as much or more money as that dude. Yeah, sure. It's easy for him, right? Because the connections and the family and, some natural giftings, right? But you can always make more money than the person who is more naturally gifted than you through discipline. Discipline is the key. Discipline is the key.
Chris, wow. What what a pleasure today. This was some good stuff today. And guys, thank you so much for your time today. We're going to wrap up our time, and we are Chris Widener and Chris Stegg. BigMoRadio.com is where you can find us. Several of you might want to work with us or find out more about who we are. To get some insight on that, you're welcome to go to BigMoRealEstateRadio.com, BigMoRadio.com, and find us there. So make sure that you like us, share this with your friends, and whatever it may be, whether it's on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you might be hearing this episode. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, Chris.
Hey, folks, I'm hoping that you enjoyed that great episode, and I just want to remind you that we are now ROI Real Estate Radio. Be sure to check us out and share this video with all those who you know will enjoy it. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.